Go on, speak.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there
Can
you
hear
go.
me? You good?
Yes, we'll begin, will we? Might as well just crack into it.
Okay, let's get going. Let's get started.
As you pointed out, your daughter's boyfriend is from Dublin.
Yes, he's born from Russian parents, but born in Dublin. He's Irish. He's full-blown Irish.
And how do you find, as a leader, fatherhood?
Yeah, much more difficult than coaching.
Are you a strict father?
Like I wouldn't say. I don't think they would say I'm strict, but I probably feel like if they aren't contributing to the families in the way that we want to, then that I want to, I guess that then sometimes I can be a little hard on.
If someone's dating your daughter, though, do you sit them down and give them the whole what are your intentions talk?
No. First of all, my daughter is a very independent, strong woman, and so I'm smart enough to know to stay out of the way.
It's a remarkably interesting life. Obviously, a lot of listeners to this know you as the former Leeds manager, Salzburg manager, first American coach to win a game of the Champions League, the Leipzig role as well. But football wasn't a thing in your household growing up whatsoever. No. They didn't really know the sport existed. You went around to your cousin's house when you were 5 and he was kicking a circular ball into a goal and you go, "What is this?" He said, "Football," and you ended up, before the age of 50, managing one of the biggest clubs in Europe, which is a pretty remarkable personal life story considering there's so many people in Europe who've committed and their family have committed their entire lives to this game. I will never get close to a position of that magnitude. When you see people who stigmatize American managers, do you think there's also an element of, we've given this much? My granddad was a West Ham fan, he was tattooed. My uncle was a hooligan, he was fighting Millwall fans, and he lost his life underneath the stands. Why does this guy deserve that position of power? The same role that Clough had, Don Revie had, a massive job in the overall kind of scope of association football. It's not really xenophobia as much as it is just a personal kind of envy of one's personal psychology that can lead them to a position of power that they could never get. Yeah,
I mean, I don't look at it that way. I understand that the game is so deep-rooted, not just in England, by the way. In every country that I've coached in Europe, there's a deep passion for the sport.
Why do you think the English were the American guy as opposed to Germany and Austria?
I think that they're not quite appreciative of our history in the game, and they think that we don't have the same depth of knowledge that they have here.
Is that based off the old superpower rivalry between the two countries? Who is the greatest country in the world? Formerly England became America, became allies in war.
I mean, listen, you would have to go into some deep historical references to understand exactly. All I would say is, I've been on this life journey to experience things for, not just football, because when I do these jobs, it's not just about coaching the team. It's about understanding the culture. It's about understanding the language. It's about understanding the league, the players, the fans, the history of the club. And so my drive is to represent wherever I work and to work with the people at the highest level that we possibly can to create success. I'm hired to do a job. It's a job, and people want to make it more magnificent and magnify it to be something more than what it is. But in the end,
it's a glorious job, though, isn't it? Though,
yeah, I love it.
To be the leader of a football team with the stands in choir singing names, representing that city, being the decision maker with that much responsibility that isn't necessarily corporate but presented via physical activity.
Yeah, I mean, but again, I'm tasked with doing a specific job, and that is to help the players and the club at that time to achieve success through the way that we believe in leadership, in football, in everything. And so I try to do it holistically. I try to understand the places that I represent. It's why I learn languages. It's why I invest entirely in everything that I do, and it's why I don't go from job to job to job to job. It's why I plan carefully about the people I work with and the jobs that I take, because I don't need to work. I love to work, and that I think is key for me.
As somebody who's in that industry, you look at those kind of mid to lower table Premier League teams, the kind of Evertons, the Leeds. These jobs, you sign 3-year contracts, but it's so unlikely based off expectation that that's actually going to occur. Like, if you look at your Leeds job, you go in, you lose the first 2 games, and then you beat Wolves, Norwich and Watford, 2 good draws. Then you lost to, Arsenal, City and Chelsea, then 2 draws, 2 wins, beat Brentford on the last day. You couldn't really have done much more. The first 2 games were due to you being new to the club. And then the next season, start well and then have a slumping forward, ended up in 4 wins and 20. But, like, how can you really stay in those jobs? It's essentially impossible. Do you kind of know that taking it and you have to put on the front of the media saying, I'll do the 3 years? Everyone, unless it goes extremely well, the Unai Emery kind of situation currently, or even the Moyes, but even he had to come and go with West Ham. Do you kind of know, taking it, that this is a stepping stone and put my name into the bracket of Premier League management, but it won't last the 3 years of my contract? Or do you have to hypnotise yourself into the most positive version of the outcome?
So I have, behind the scenes, I have my own team. I have a data team. Right now I have an AI team, and then I have an agency, and I'm always doing research on different clubs to see what their transfer politics have been, what kind of impact that's had on the team, how do they play, can we translate the team that they have into something that resembles what I think is important. And before I went to Leeds, I was told by my data team that within 3 years, Leeds had an 84% chance of getting relegated.
The sinking sand of despair, the smell of dread in the air. I'm head to toe in my own fear. I'm going to die, no need to cry.
So I knew going into it that, especially at the time that I went into it, that I knew there was a high level of probability that we were going to face relegation often. And I wasn't afraid of that. You know, I believe that Victor Orta and the people involved at the club were the right people. I had been in contact with them for many seasons or many months. And we felt that we could transfer the team into something that would resemble what I thought about football, what they thought about football, what the community demanded. And so, but all of that knowing that failure was more than a probability. And now that being said, we stayed up in my first year, and in my second year, I was sacked at 17th. But if you went by match day 20, we would have actually been in 13th place if we were 1 game less played than the rest.
Do you think it would have kept them up if you stayed?
Yeah, I think we would.
Because you knew the squad and the new guy coming in.
I believe that we were, and actually the trajectory of the team after the World Cup was, by all metrics, in an extremely positive direction. And internally, we knew that. Internally, it's funny. The day I got sacked, I had a leadership council meeting with the leaders in the team, and we were discussing a few different topics. And Luke Ayling said to me, Jesse, we just need to stay calm. Like when you came in last year, we have plenty of time. We're in a good direction. We've got this. And I said to him literally that day, I agree with you, but I think we have time, but I don't know that I have time. And then that afternoon, I was sacked.
When a manager gets sacked, you never really hear about it from their perspective. You only hear the media version. Do you plead your case? Like, is it like getting broken up with by the love of your life when you're 19 and you can tell by her that she's not touching you in the same way? Do you walk into the boardroom and know?
I don't know that analogy is, but I understand what
you're saying. Do you walk in and you know this is bad news? She's shivering a bit.
Well, Victor Orta and
or do they just go through the agent?
And Angus Kinnear, no, we're loitering on the outside of my office, and I could tell by their body language and the fact that they weren't just normally they'd walk right in and say hello. I could tell. So I said, "Hey guys," and then they walk as they were walked in, and I said, "So it's done," and they said, "Yeah, right." And so yeah, of course, at that moment, then
did you say why?
No, I knew why. I knew why. And I'm not going to tell you why, but I knew why. So
results or
yeah, I mean, there were certain people involved that had been against me for a while, and so but we were aligned for, I mean, most of the time. I think the way that we worked together was outstanding.
In terms of the MLS standard on a global scale, you could probably argue that the standard of football in America isn't rising, but do you think that the likes of you are sacrificial lambs that will normalise the fact that a US manager can come into the Premier League, and maybe you'll be a 60-year-old legend and won't get sacked from an Everton job due to the fact that your results and the fall of your results are overrated due to your nationality? But do you think that, people like you, Bob Bradley before, you just put the foot in the door to actually normalise the concept of the US football manager? Were you a bit too early? It also didn't help that there was a sitcom taking the piss out of the concept of an American simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean,
like Jesse Marsch kept Leeds up. You hear nothing about it. A tough job, especially when you're following a legend of football, not just Leeds, that Bielsa was, with a certain style of play. But you were tasked with one job when you came in: keep the club in the Premier League. When Harry Redknapp used to do that, or Brian Robson did it at West Brom, they were fucking geniuses. Yours was deleted instantly. It was like your failure was waited for.
Yeah, so I wouldn't describe it that way. I would... and I don't think about my, I've said this often, please don't use me as a role model or an example, or put the weight of the expectation of U.S. football, soccer on my shoulders, because I don't need that, and I don't want that.
But you not accidentally take it.
Well, you do. Listen, I followed Bob, and listen, I'm here because Bob introduced us, right?
Bob's a great guy.
And I can tell he likes you, and I can already see why. I did follow him, and I tried to learn from him and what he went through when I came here. But in the end, I was just going to Leeds to do the best job that I could for that club and that fan base and everything and that team. And so I understand that there's always going to be comparisons. And when you get to this level of managing, then there's always attention and expectation and a lot that comes with that. But in the end, again, this is a job, and my focus is to do the best I can to help the team.
So as a Bradleyite, someone who learnt off Bob, you were in Princeton, Ivy League. What's going on? Did you drop something?
I dropped a cap to my bottle.
So you meet Bob Bradley at Princeton. You go to university on a football scholarship.
No, at the Ivy League schools, you cannot get scholarships.
So how did you end up going to...
What you can...
F. Scott Fitzgerald's University.
Yeah, I mean, I was a good student, but one of the things that being a legacy or being involved in a sport can do is help you with the admissions process. So without Bob's assistance, I probably am not getting admitted into Princeton.
How did you know Bob before Princeton?
We used to have something called the Olympic Development Program, and so it wasn't like it is now, where it's advanced to club football all throughout the country, and that there's scouts everywhere. You made your city team, then you made your state team, then you made your regional team, and then you tried out for the national team. Bob, I played for the Midwest national team because I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or regional team because I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Bob was, for my age group, the coach of the East regional team. So we played on Thanksgiving weekend. So Thanksgiving for all those American listeners.
It's great fun. I spent a Thanksgiving in America once, and we shot guns out the back. And the drunk granddad told me that guns should be legal, and why would we stab ourselves like all you people do in Ireland and the UK? It was a very interesting weekend.
I don't know that you should stab or shoot anyone, but and so I played against his team, and I played quite well over this weekend. And then they had a list on our different programs, like what our grade point average and all this, because it was a lot of college recruiting, and so I had good grades. And then he
How good were you at football?
Yeah, I mean,
could you have played championship?
Yeah, I could play championship.
Could you have played?
I couldn't have played Premier League.
Derby 08? No,
maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
There's that famous clip you sticking the foot in on Beckham.
Yes, I was good at that.
Yeah, is that because he was is that because you always had this fight because your old man was a factory worker, that no one's better than us? That when you saw the superstar that was David Beckham, Is there a link between the fact that you went on to be a Premier League manager and a Champions League manager to the fact that you were the guy who was kicking Beckham in the stomach when he got past you? Is that a personality trait that you'd recommend for people? Don't accept anyone's better.
Please.
And if David Beckham's on the pitch, I'm going to kick him and
Please.
I'm going to square off with him.
I don't recommend anyone to be like me.
But why,
but
though?
I was, listen, the Beckham thing was he had gotten a couple shots in on me, and I had even said something to the referee like, hey, are you going to do anything about this? And I could tell that he wasn't. And so the next play, David inadvertently slapped me a little bit, and so I lost my mind and I kicked him. But I am built with a little bit of fearlessness. Like, I'm not afraid of being vulnerable. I'm not afraid of being in difficult situations. I actually thrive in that, and I like to be in pressure situations. I like to be challenged. I like to learn new languages, and I like to be in interviews where they put my ass on the wall. So this is good. But you know, in the end, I think that if you want to excel in this business and then in this life, you have to go after it. Like, one thing is for sure, I will never regret being more aggressive than being more passive. So I typically am. That's typically my way of thinking about football. That's my way of thinking about life, and that's the way I do what I do.
But you know that Mourinho element of, let's say, targeting 5 or 6 people in the dressing room, what he traditionally calls the untouchables. You can see Marco Materazzi when he leaves Inter Milan. He views him as a father. Was there an argument that you were so focused on your own kind of career and ability to survive that you couldn't create the relationship with the players where they die for you? You're systematic. You're about your own career. You have the data guys. But do you have that emotional humanity that's required
actually,
to be the top tier of
That's
management?
what I'm more about, actually. When I was a player, I was only about winning. And when I'm as a coach, I'm much more about relationships and investment in people and leadership. And that's what makes me tick. And I think if you asked any players who played for me, they related with me in that way, and in the sense that I tried to get to know them as people and help even more so than footballers. I tried to understand who they are as young men and then help them uncover their true quality. And once I think we were able to do that together, the football part's the easy part.
And I get into this conversation with people all the time about the people like Klopp and Guardiola. Guardiola's tactics are obviously magnificent.
Yeah.
He's a Cruyff head. He's a Rinus Mikel, total football guy. But at the end of the day, I think it's his personality and his ability to convince people to buy into his method, like Mourinho in his peak, like Ferguson did. Football's a simple game overcomplicated by idiots. Is football management very much about... Because you can copy tactics. We can all just watch...
Well, everybody copies Pep.
Yeah,
right?
But why can't anyone do it the same? I know he has the money and the funding.
Yeah.
But it's also because...
Yeah, he has a...
The delivery of the message and the way your personality hits the players who are representing you. There's a level of dying for someone that you can go through. Like, are his players even that much better? Or does he buy characters based off him knowing... they will die for me? Because
his players are that much better. So let's start there. Now, don't get me wrong. Pep does. I think Pep is a genius, right? And I think part of his genius is his man management. However, we know how things work in football. But in the end, the evolution of people and coaches and leaders is their own story, right? And the best coaches can wear many hats. It's not one thing, it's everything. And players are judging coaches with everything they do, everything they say, every move they make. I'm not afraid of that. I'm used to that. And that doesn't define what we try to do as a team, because not everybody needs to be happy, but what everybody needs to be is clear as to what our expectations are, what our demands are, and then the responsibility that we owe to each other at all moments. And the more that you're able to create that through training, through tactics, through video, through conversation, through relationships, the better your teams will be.
Do you not think that player power is getting out of control now, though, and aided by social media? Like, if you look at Manchester United, for example, that's the team that I grew up supporting and loving. As someone who's a football coach and someone who studies management, do you think that the problem with that club has actually anything got to do with the individuals who've got the job time after time? It wasn't Moyes, it wasn't Mourinho, Van Gaal, Solskjaer possibly was, because he was. It's a culture that Marcus Rashford can score 1 league goals in 16 games, but he puts out a tweet that's so powerful because his agents and PR team got him on this whole school lunches thing that he's unsellable. And
here's how I would if the club allows players to not to be more selfish than selfless, and this often has nothing to do with the actual manager. This has to do with the overarching leadership of what a club is and the unity that club shows within their leadership group. If they allow room for players to be selfish, then often that will be the case. That's not the case for every player, but it's easier for players to act selfishly than it is selflessly. And think about it. Most high-achieving footballers, and now when you're talking about a place like Man U, you have to be at the highest percentage of talent and achievement.
Not now.
Well, I'm just saying in theory, okay? But even still, I mean, Marcus Rashford as a talent is at the top end of the spectrum. And I'm saying, you know, you can't even go 1%. You have to go 0.1% of the talent in the world of footballers that have ever played the game. You're talking about the elite of the elite of the elite. And again, if the club doesn't set the tone, and not just the manager, but the entire club, that the focus on the team is the team, then a lot of them, not all of them, because there are some very strong characters in football and some of the best players. Erling Haaland, for example, is a total character.
Yeah, what was
person.
it like working with him? But
I'm just saying, if allowed to act selfishly, they will often take that path.
Why is he so insanely good? I know he has the physicality, and I've discussed this on the show before. Do you think that when the father kind of doesn't fully make it and is also associated with something that is his most famous moment is the Roy Keane challenge, and that would be humiliating for a young child to be associated with your dad got his career ended and Keane standing over him. Do you think that he might have stored that emotion and said, I'm never going to be inferior to another footballer again, and his childhood psychology was geared towards be physical, be immovable, and never be the guy lying on the ground in an inferior team, and that's why he became a monster? Like, how is he that consistent and good and psychologically strong?
Well, there's a few factors with Erling himself. Okay, I don't know about. One is genetically. Okay, he's clearly gifted in a way that very few people are, and that I saw immediately. The power, the strength, the agility, the quickness, the speed. It's right away puts him in professional football.
The way the ball leaves the foot.
In the top, again, very small percentage. He then it didn't take a lot for him to understand what football was, like what the professional age, what the demands, like how to take care of himself, how to train every day, how to treat your teammates. Like he was, because of his father, I think he was kind of built like this. Three is he's got a magnetic personality. He loves people. He loves to laugh. He loves to be in a team. He's inherently selfless, but he understands that scoring goals is everything, right? And he's committed to that. But if you're on a team with Erling, you're having fun. Okay, he's a good lad. So, you know, and then by the way, he's also very intelligent. You know, like, so that's another thing. Is it DNA? Is it that his father, he worked with his father, he watched a lot of football, but you don't have to explain things to him in five different ways.
Yeah, how do you manage him? How do you manage him? Do you give him advice?
Yeah, yes. The way that the biggest challenge I had with managing Erling was giving him enough information because he could develop at such a rapid pace. Like he was developing at a pace that I've never seen. His learning curve was incredible, and I just knew that in order to keep him mentally and intellectually engaged, that I had to keep challenging him to do more, to give more, and as young as he was at Salzburg, even there to show in his own way to be a leader, and he ate that stuff up.
Does national management that isn't the USA job at all interest you? And I just say this as a fan. I'm an Irishman, as you know, and we've currently a vacancy for a managerial role. And if you look at historically the best manager in the history of the Irish state, it's Jackie Charlton, and we're a country of poets and feelers and drinkers and people who like to be engaged with the person who's leading us into battle. And Jackie Charlton was the Englishman who, in a way, became Irish, and we ordained him a saint, essentially. Okay. And we've got a series of people in recently who don't really have that connectivity with the general public. Irish America's always been such a strong link. You look at John F. Kennedy and all this shit. Would the Irish job interest you? Evan Ferguson up front.
Sure.
Jesse Marsch comes in, and we're talking about Ellis Island, and we're talking about the famine, and you face the media, and everyone's on your team.
Yes. I mean, listen, it's not. I've said no to a lot of jobs over the last 10 months. And the main reason is because what I said to you earlier. I don't need to work. I love to work, but I don't need it. And it's because now I'm because of achieving in different things. I'm financially, I'm intellectually, I'm happy with my life, and it's nice to dedicate time to my family when I have this downtime. But what I need to do, what do I need? I need to find people that think similar to me and have similar goals and have a similar work ethic and a similar work idea. And it's not that my way is the right way. This is my way. And these are the things that I believe in. And I'm always looking for people that can try to, can fit with me and I can fit with them.
But it must be as well. It's like anything. It's like if you achieve something in life so great, the law of marginal utility. You've had the Leeds job. You've managed in the Champions League. It is also a tough re-entrance point because you now do have standards of the player you worked with, the responsibility. So you don't want to just come in and take that I'll save you from relegation job again because you've done that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, listen, even though the Premier League is a bigger league than the Bundesliga, my Leipzig team was much better than my Leeds team. Much better, right? I mean, not even close. But
why didn't it work at Leipzig?
Listen, there were personal issues and then there were professional issues. And the way that it worked, I didn't feel right about continuing with the project there because of what was happening, again, in my personal life. And then professionally, we didn't have a sport director. I felt alone. I just felt alone. And then I was going through some things with my wife and so it just didn't feel like I belonged there, and I didn't want to be there, so I left.
At what age did you get to where you realized things like love, family, or actual companionship exceeded all these professional goals? Because you see some of these guys out managing football teams, and they're so into it that you wonder, are they fucking narcissists or what's going on?
Well, it is tough. I mean, I tell you, it's because the demands. Here's how I feel. I can't speak for everybody, but I feel that I pour my absolute self into the job, and at the detriment to my other relationships in my life often, and that part I don't like. But it's when the stakes are high, it's the only way that you can try to create success. Is this full investment and dedicating my entire intellectual energy to exactly the task at hand, which is the team. And again, that's why I enjoy my downtime, because I feel like I deprive my wife and my children and my life, my normal life. And I don't, by the way, I don't want to be famous. I want to be a normal guy. I want to live a quiet life with my family, with my friends, and I just want to live. I don't do football. Fame is the last.
Do you think some of the football managers do want to be?
Everybody in football does. They love it.
What was it like being on the sideline beside a Klopp and Guardiola? Are they performing a bit in the sideline, knowing that this?
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're all. Everyone has to put on a little bit of
an act. Like when you throw the water bottle, the famous, you threw the water bottle and then you said, they're fucking scared. It's a famous YouTube clip.
Okay.
They're fucking scared. And then a Leeds Northerner goes, it's your fucking job to make them not scared.
Yeah, okay.
Are you performing when you're throwing the bottle, trying to connect with the fans, going,
no,
I feel what you feel?
No. Then I was talking to my staff and this was a little bit of an issue, was trying to get the team to always be fearless. But I loved working with the team. Like I would never, of everything that happened at Leeds, I would never put anything other than like thankfulness onto the relationships I had with those players.
How'd you find the audience differences? Like, did you prefer the MLS kind of let's go for a beer and a hoagie, or do you like? Did you love the intensity of?
Yeah, I love the intensity. I mean, the best thing for me, I mean, we work hard all week and prepare, and we spend countless hours at the training ground, and we're looking through video and planning and analyzing, and all to get to match day. And like a lot of days when I'm working my ass off, I'm like, and again, I'm depriving the rest of my life, and I feel like I'm aging exponentially.
And did your kids have to go to school in Leeds and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, they've always traveled with us and everywhere we've gone. But, then there's match day. And so when you go and you step on that touchline and you feel the energy of the crowd, this is why you do it, right? This is the addiction. This is the problem. Without that, the job is totally different, right? So, and I, and I love being there with a group of young men and a staff and a club and fan and where it means so much to everyone, because that's how I feel. It means so much to me.
It's a rock and roll job, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's just
it
so
can be.
built on adrenaline and just kind of personal
Yes.
relationships.
Yes.
Were you ever walking down the street in Leeds and would have like confrontations with like?
Yes.
Would they say?
No, I have.
in Marsch.
And I would say I don't know the exact number, but it's thousands of interactions in Leeds or elsewhere, and not one negative interaction, not one.
And when you kept them up, you would have been a hero for a few weeks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the best story I have about that is when I went to dinner on like Thursday night. We played on Sunday, or no, it was Friday night. And as my wife and I were walking down the street, we had people honking on the street in Harrogate going, "We're all Leeds, aren't we? And we're with you, coach." And like, and so, that sense of community was great at Leeds. But again, I don't, that part, obviously the sense of community is amazing. But again, I'd much rather walk down the road and just go eat and sit down quietly and have a laugh with my wife and then go home.
Is it strange to be involved in a sport that is just so against the actual principles of where you come from in terms of the salary cap? Like, England just never got there. They clearly should have. We have developed an inequality that is just absolutely beyond belief. Man City are probably going to win 4 in a row. They just won a treble. Newcastle can just buy themselves into a position. Girona are top of La Liga. They're owned by the City club. PSG monopolise that league. Do you think that without the salary cap, the fans are just kind of watching a repetitive conveyor belt of money, wasting our time and falling for Carragher and Neville selling us this ridiculous concept of competitiveness that doesn't really exist?
Well, and how about now? And then they want to create a super league.
Yeah.
So, listen, I've been watching football my whole life, right? I'm familiar with the structure, the infrastructure. I'm familiar with how things work. But yes, I find it, in terms of being a fan, I find it uninteresting in that sense. Like, I do love.
Who do you support?
I've never really supported. I mean, I watched Milan when AC Milan,
the Sacchi era.
Yeah, because that's what I could get on my rabbit ears television when I was young.
In England, Leeds. Still, do you still kind of root? Did you hope Leeds go up and have a soft spot for Leeds?
I hope Leeds go up. Absolutely, for the sake of those lads on the team, and I know how important it is.
And would you have studied Leeds? Like, would you know who David Batty is and stuff like that?
Yeah. No, I mean, and listen, if I wasn't sure, I received like over 50 Leeds books from fans while I was there.
And you hate United because you were the Leeds manager. Because Leeds and United hate each other.
While I was at Leeds, I never had the chance to play Man U.
Yeah.
So they sacked me right before we were supposed to play them 2 times in a row, and I was really looking forward to that. For me, there's nothing better than
because it would have also given you a chance to save yourself. Because if you beat United or got a result, though, you're immortalized.
And maybe that's why they sacked me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I there's no better like.
But you hate United as the former Leeds.
Yeah, I mean,
so you wouldn't take the United job if offered.
No. Not right now.
But in life.
But I won't be offered the United job.
No, but let's just say the next job you got was brilliant. You created a structure and Manchester United were looking out for the person who'd mastered.
Yeah, I don't know. That's some sort of fictitious world. But in general, at Leeds, we knew that wearing red, anything red, Man U, when we'd watch Man U, we'd cheer against them. This is built into the identity of the club, no question.
What's the favourite moment of your career? Was it kind of Montreal Impact early days, or is it actually just like the first Leeds win, the last minute winners? Because you got into a habit of late winners, didn't you?
I think it might be that. I mean, there's the Liverpool match in Salzburg. There's winning my first trophy in New York, right? We won the Supporters' Shield.
Did you beat Liverpool with Salzburg, though?
No, we lost.
Yeah, 4-3.
Yeah.
But a remarkable game.
It was an amazing game. And then, there's the Norwich win at.
It's got to be Brentford that last day.
Brentford was fucking insane. That the feeling of, I would say that day I've never felt a sense of success, because I tell you, that team, those players, those people, that club, that team was defeated when I showed up. They were done. And I tell you, the day that I stepped in front of the team and I looked at the looks on their faces, I thought my first thought was, what did I get myself into? Because it was a much more difficult proposition, being more intimate with the situation than I would have thought from outside.
How did you interview for Leeds? Like, what happens? You just get an email, a call saying,
Victor,
or do you apply? What happens when Bielsa's leaving?
I think I have a CV somewhere, but I didn't send a CV. Victor and I had spoken for a couple of years. He reached out to me through a mutual acquaintance. And then we kind of had some initial discussions, and he was always incredibly respectful about Marcelo. Always. He, like everyone was, right? But he knew that he needed a succession plan. He knew that.
You know, when they say that you were saying that you didn't realize the players would be this fatigued, and people took it as an accusation that Bielsa was overtraining them.
No, I said that.
Do you think that was a mistake?
Yes, that was a mistake.
100%. You learn from the Clough Revy era. The first thing you should have done is studied the Brian Clough damned United. What happened to him when he inherited the Leeds job off an icon?
But
you went on TalkSport and criticised.
Yeah, but I complimented Marcelo 1,000 times. 1,000 times.
But the fans are sitting there going, "What did he give you the right?"
Because I respect Marcelo, and I watched his football for years. When I was the national team coach, my first as the assistant, the first match was against Chile and Bielsa, and I studied his team then, and I studied his career, and so I had respect for him. But this was not like a condemning and damning comment.
Do you get why it was taken as that, though?
Well, the fans were waiting. They were.
Well, he was the guy who got them up after 16 years in the abyss.
But of course. But they were a lot of fans were waiting for me to slip up this way.
Because you were American or because you were inheriting Bielsa?
Yeah, all of it combined, right? And I understand that, and it was a mistake, 100%. But it was the truth. It was the truth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so it wasn't like, and honestly, when I said it, I didn't even think of it as like, honestly, I didn't even mean it as Marcelo overtrained. I said the team was overtrained. And they needed to be refreshed, and they needed to be managed so that they could physically perform on match day. That was clear.
But when you're going into a job like that, is it the kind of excessive self-belief that's needed to come from learning what football is in Chicago to get a Champions League job that blinded you from knowing these guys adore Bielsa? They show up in his house and they chant his name. I need to be careful with this. Just look after steady the team. I'll still keep us up, but I need to nearly join the worship of Bielsa until my time comes to establish my own identity, because it's a common mistake in football.
No, they needed different leadership at that time. No question. They needed more support. They needed more understanding of now mentally and physically how to manage the situation so that they could equip themselves with more power and energy and belief to do the job. And that and again, that's just what the situation was. And it was clear. It was so clear. And even, of course, the players, they appreciated everything that Marcelo did for them, right? But I think there was a lot of understanding that it had become difficult. It had been difficult to continue the process of what Marcelo was. Physically and mentally, the demands were so high that it became almost humanly impossible for them to continue.
Are you a religious guy?
I wouldn't say that I'm religious, but I'd say I'm spiritual.
How do you control mental health? How do you stay giving a fuck?
You invest in people so that you feel supported, which is important, right? Because a manager is a lonely job, very lonely job. And especially when it's tough, right? You can go to bed at night thinking, how am I going to get this right?
But like in life in general, the guy you see walking down the street who has a nagging of vodka beside him who's shouting at the traffic light. What do you think happened to those people?
Yeah, I think it can be a combination of things, but I think mental health is often at the core of those
trauma that wasn't dealt with, which is just look at the draw of what kind of environment you were born into.
People get put in difficult situations and they can't find ways out, and then they can, I've had family members and people that I know that have had issues with drugs and alcohol and mental health and finding a way to support them and believe in them and show them at the most important moments.
Do you drink?
Yeah, but I'm a social drinker. I'm not a heavy drinker.
You'd rarely have a hangover.
No, it's been a long time.
Do you fear the concept of dying? Are you kind of afraid of the isolation of...
No, I don't think so. I think I more relish the opportunity to live. And I want to, even again, if you were to go back to Leipzig and the decisions I've made in the last years have something to do with the fact that, my sense of mortality with my wife has changed. And so my sense of seizing what is important to me has changed.
When did you meet your wife?
High school.
I
got my driver's license and I asked her out on a date like the next day.
And then you picked her up in a
old Honda.
Did you beep out the front with a leather jacket on?
It was November. I may very well have had a leather jacket on. Yes. Maybe.
And you just beeped at the front and say, "Get in."
No. I was pretty nervous. Actually, that's probably one of the most nervous moments of my life was that.
And you've been together the entire time?
Yeah, pretty much. We went to different university, and we had a little time where we decided to take a break, but very short time, and we've been pretty loyal and with each other.
What a unity. So every time, in a way, you win the Austrian double or keep Leeds up, Kim is kind of keeping them up and winning the Austrian double simultaneously.
No question. I mean, I think it's harder for the wives than it is for us because they feel like it's out of their hands, right? They're just hoping and praying that the match or the moment goes the way that they want it to go, and their ability to control anything is
so
makes
it's a
them
full-on
helpless.
sharing of a life.
Yeah.
Do you think
I mean, that's the way we've done it, and we've always moved together, and not everybody does that, right? But we have.
But that would be a great way to avoid the existential questions as well, because you're not just living for yourself, and it would take you out of your ego and make you think you're not that important. In fact, the wife is more so, if not equally important.
Well, and the family, right? I think, again, as footballers, we're inherently selfish, and I think I had the good fortune of meeting my wife early in my life because she is not that way. She's much more passionate or compassionate and careful with relationships, which was a very important lesson for me to learn at a young age.
American culture v UK culture, the accusations that Americans kind of are overly extroverted, delusional, and kind of cheesy would be the term, is something I don't agree with. I believe that enthusiasm and ability to kind of present your genuine personality is actually a higher form of humor than the dry.
I mean, you go to different cultures. Germany is different than Austria, is different than England, is different than the US, right? Now I live in Italy, and that culture I'm learning from and enjoying. I do know that English people have dry wit, right? I didn't really attribute that entirely to some inherent pessimism, which I think exists in this country. And almost like, like I get it when they see maybe someone who is positive, they don't believe that that's really possible. But again, this is who I am, and this is the way I think. And by the way, I don't think I'd be where I've. Do
you think the pessimism is a defensiveness?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, sometimes we all have insecurities, and unearthing what those insecurities are and how to deal with them. And maybe Americans deal with our insecurities by being overly positive. That is possible, right?
Yeah.
And I
Land
understand.
Of the free, home of the brave, man. God bless it. I love it.
But I mean,
bar the war crime shit, I pretty much love that country.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we have plenty.
Do you vote red or blue?
I vote blue.
You're not Republican?
No. But I probably am more independent. I would say I've become over time a little bit more fiscally conservative, but socially liberal.
Did the wokeism stuff begin to piss you off after a while in the last, let's say, 6 years?
Any extremism for me, it doesn't always make sense. And not that I'm always looking to be the middle of the road, but I'm just trying. If it's a democracy and trying to figure out how to serve the masses, then that's that's where my attention goes.
Yeah, who's your favorite president since you've been alive? Clinton?
Maybe, but I thought probably Obama. But there were things that I thought Ronald Reagan was really good at. And then, there's
the war on drugs and all that stuff, though. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, his was a lot about fiscal responsibility, right? And it created, I think, a movement, an economic movement in the United States that was helpful and necessary at that
And that's
time.
another thing about Americans. They believe in individuality, this concept of freedom. Like, although everyone accuses them of kind of flag saluting, in a way, being your own person and not relying on the government and choosing your own journey is much more popular than it is here in the UK, Ireland, or places like this.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think that our system, our economic system, is built in many ways for that, for people to be aggressive with, creating businesses with innovative ideas, with rewarding that through business, right? So, and yeah, I think we're taught that. We're taught that at a young age, that in the land of the free, the home of the brave, like you said, we can do anything. And we can, if you put your mind to it, that you can achieve anything. And that propaganda, and we believe.
And just do it quickly. The all-time 11 of players you've managed.
A lot would be Salzburg, but I would go Bradley Wright Phillips, Erling Haaland, Dominic Szoboszlai, Sasha Kljestan,
Rafinha.
Lloyd Sam.
Rafinha.
Yeah, I mean, but Rafinha, I didn't have enough time with him. Liam Cooper.
Calvin Phillips?
I like Calvin a lot, but probably not my best 11. Tyler Adams. Kamar Lawrence. Pete Gulashi. Max Vuber. Rasmus Christensen. That's, I think, about 11.
In 2026... the world is coming together for the final test to see if the greatest country in the world can mesh with the greatest sport in the world. And that's why Messi's there, and that's why Beckham's handing him the Ballon d'Or, dancing in the kitchen, and his wife. In a way, it is a celebration of capitalism. Everyone's going to be pulled out for that. The major cities are hosting it. 2026, the US World Cup, is going to be football's big goodbye before it eventually admits it's no longer for the people. Surely the US men's national team job, with the players they have now, the golden era, so to speak, would be a dream. I know you can't say because someone's currently in the job.
I don't want to say that about anybody's in a job, but of course, coaching a national team is amazing. And I was part of it as an assistant, and we loved every day. So, but I'm less drawn to this notion of and more thinking about who are the people involved and what would it be like to work with them and how could we create success together. And if I can find that, then that's what I'll do.
Jesse Marsch, I hope you've enjoyed being on the Michael Anthony Show, and I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Right on, brother.
Thank
Thanks.
you, mate. All the best.
Good job. Good job. You don't mess around.
It's been how many years, my boy?
Audiobooks, they're a bit shorter than
You
audiobooks.
still don't know my tears of joy. No need to go, just take it slow.
Podcast somewhere.
And have you heard the Michael Anthony Show?
Nice show.
Makes me feel just fine. What's the hell? Makes me see the light. What about those tears? Tears, believe my eyes. How's it make you feel? Makes me